everyone, I'm Jessica with Pencil First Games, and I'm so excited to tell you more about Vineyard, a winemaking game, and to take a look at how this works with shared worker placement and action selection. So this is a game where you are going to be collectively moving these wonderful workers around the vineyard, taking part in different winemaking steps, and everyone is moving these workers around together. So you are going to be using your cards to choose actions to take and finding those best times to jump in, to make the best choices, to make the best wines. It is awesome. So we are going to take a look at how this plays, a couple of sample turns to show you how you can build and invest in some of these upgrades to create really powerful combinations and pull off some really exciting turns. Let's dive in and take a look at Vineyard. This is what the main play area for Vineyard will look like. Most activity will take place on this beautiful board where you'll see different location actions that you'll be able to take in order to participate in the winemaking process. The goal is to gain the most star tokens, which represent victory points, by the time the third truck takes off. So the main goal and sort of the gameplay elements that you're doing here is you're going to have these heart tokens in your player color, and you're trying to add these into these winemaking steps by playing action cards in order to move these 4 friends to different spaces all around the vineyard. And what you're looking for are neat opportunities where you can take advantage of that and make the best choices to make the best wines. So we'll go into everything in detail, but just at kind of a top level here, there's going to be ways to go into the field and kind of manipulate these grape tokens, adding your efforts there. You'll see some heart tokens up there. You can then harvest those, which will then move them into these 3 crush bins, where they'll then be taken and used to make wine. You'll see these different barrels right here with recipes on them. Once those are made, they're then down in the cellars where you can age them along, ultimately getting them ready to load onto these trucks. So there are going to be 3 trucks that you use each game, a level 1, 2, and 3. And there are multiples of each level, so each game you'll have a little bit of a different sort of objective to work towards. We'll see how that works, but you can kind of see how the main kind of winemaking steps are here. There's also the cool greet action where you'll get to interact with one of these train cards for a bonus, and also the paperwork action where you'll go, and in order to do that you will play the paperwork card, which will let you pick up all of your played cards again, making them available, and you'll also gain coins that you can then decide how you want to invest in friend upgrades or worker upgrades, or possibly replacing a basic action card with something like an improved action card to make your actions even better. So you're going to look for clever opportunities to kind of set yourself up for exciting turns, and also find those ways where you can add your hearts into the winemaking process and steps so that it kind of flows through into that wine as it makes its way onto those trucks. This is what your player area may look like. You'll have a player mat out here, and each player has a different one. You'll notice that there are the 4 friends listed on here, Sylvie, Tomas, Greta, and Joe, each with a different specialty and different upgrades that you can invest in. At the start of the game, though, you will start with 1 friend who has one of their upgrades already unlocked. So for instance, on here, Sylvie has the first Make Wine specialty upgrade already upgraded for you, whereas on another player mat, you might see that Joe starts off with the Greet specialty already upgraded. You'll also notice that across players, these different friends have different specialties. So again, in this example, on this board, Sylvie is potentially much better at making wine, but for a different player, Sylvie is better at aging wine. You'll see why this makes a big difference as you kind of go through and invest your coins in different upgrades, but we will get there in a little bit. The important thing to note is that there are 4 friends and that these specialties differ across the player boards. So let's keep this one out here. We'll go through how that's going to work in another moment. Other things you may have in your player area, you'll have a reference card that kind of goes through what the turn sequence is on one side, plus reminders about game end scoring, as well as a quick reminder of the different location actions and how those work. We're going to go into those in much more detail, but there is a nice little reminder here at hand. Other things that you're going to have in your player area are heart tokens, and these are going to represent your efforts that get placed into the vineyard. We'll take a look at how that works in a minute, but that is really kind of your mark. You are creating something and you can physically see how your decisions play through that winemaking process. You may collect coins, and again, we'll talk about how to invest those over time. And then there are also star tokens, which are worth victory points at game end that you may collect as you're playing as well. The core element, though, is your deck of cards. So everyone will start with the same 7 action cards, and these correspond with the different locations on the board. Each player has the exact same deck of cards, just with different card backs in order to indicate player color. So on your turn, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be choosing an action card, which indicates which location you're going to go to, and assigning it to one of these friends on your mat. So for instance, let's say that I want to harvest. I would choose my harvest card from my available hand of cards and place it under one of the friends. So let's say, for instance, that I placed harvest under Greta. That would assign that to her. And what that means is that I would take Greta, her standee, and she would then move to the harvest action on the board. We'll see how those all work and how those actions play out in a little bit, but this is kind of the core element of the game in choosing an action and assigning it to a worker or one of these 4 friends. Again, since it's shared worker placement, everyone is moving these friends around, and we'll see how that kind of, the interactions that creates, the different decision points. But that is the main part of how you are going to be doing a turn, is taking a card from your hand, assigning it to a friend, following the location action, and then there's a couple of potential cleanup steps. Now, in future turns, I would then have to play to someone else. I cannot play, for instance, I can't say Greta's going to cultivate yet because I need to use all of the friends at least once before assigning a second action card. So for instance, if I really want to cultivate, I can't use Greta, but for instance, maybe there's an opening for Joe to go there. So I would then play my cultivate card to Joe, and that means that I would take Joe, and Joe would move on the board to that cultivate space. Again, we would continue going through. There is no order to playing these cards. So for instance, even though on the board, you'll see that it kind of flows from cultivate to harvest, to make wine, age wine, and load, I can play these in any order. So for instance, maybe it seems like a good opportunity to load trucks. And that means maybe we'll go have Sylvie do that action again. Then Sylvie would move on the board to the load truck action and take that action. Finally, at this point, I must play a card to Tomas. We will go through the paperwork action in more detail. This one's a little different in that it kind of is always available. If I can't do anything, or if I really think that this is a good time to take this action, I could actually play paperwork here, even though I haven't played one to Tomas. But that is an exception, and we'll get to that when we talk about the location action and how that really works. But then maybe I would greet with Tomas. Tomas' standee would then head over to the greet space and take that action. Now that I have played a card under each of these 4 workers, I then can use one of the cards that's remaining and now assign it to a second friend. So maybe now is the time for Sylvie to make wine. We would then move her over there. Now, you'll see at a certain point, you're going to be limited by the actions of the cards you haven't played. And that's where paperwork is going to come in. That is the action that lets you pick up all your cards again. So for instance, if right now, if I really wanted to greet again, I can't. The only actions I haven't played are age wine and paperwork. So I would have to do one of those before I could greet again. Again, paperwork is one of the really cool elements of this, of how you're going to be investing in coins and picking those cards back up, and we'll see how that works. But this is just an overview of how you are actually playing cards to your player mat. Now, the other thing that we will talk through some more as we look at how you invest is how you actually get to activate these different upgrades for friends or for the workers as you use them. So again, for instance, let's take a closer look at how this works. Sylvie on this player board has the make wine specialty, and she already starts with an upgrade here. When you make wine, use one less grape for up to one wine. Now, if I play the make wine action, she will be able to take advantage of that ability. However, if I put make wine under Tomas, for instance, he does not have that specialty. He potentially could be great at greeting, but this does not trigger. So there's really cool combos that you can set up by using the right action card and the right friend upgrades at the right time. And this all depends on what's going on the board, that big board that we're going to get to in a little bit, and take a look at how everything there works. But this again is your player area, and this kind of gives you an idea of what that will look like as you're playing through, as you are placing action cards with these different workers, and eventually using paperwork to take those all back into your hand and then reuse them again. Vineyard is all about adding your efforts into the winemaking process through these different location actions as everyone is moving around these 4 workers. Another thing to keep in mind as you're moving friends around the vineyard is that if they are already at that space, they cannot perform that same action. So for instance, I cannot use my Cultivate card to have Tomas or Greta go there because they are already there. So what happens is you'll see that everything kind of flows through here. You have different action spaces and everything kind of flows through here as we are making wine, going into the crush bins, moving everything into these cellars down here. And then eventually we're going to come over here and load the trucks with these different wines. 3 trucks will be used every game. You're going to have a level 1, 2, and 3. And once that 3rd one has taken off, the game ends immediately. You score and find out who has the most, again, of these star tokens, and that is the winner who has made the best choices to make the best wine. Cultivate uses a large circle, which means that we can have any number of workers at this location at any time. So on my turn, maybe I choose to use the Cultivate card and play that on my player board to bring Sylvie to the Cultivate spot. So we would then move Sylvie over to this large circle and take the Cultivate action. What Cultivate allows you to do is you get to go into the field and manipulate the grape tokens and make them even better. So you will choose any row or column, and you are then going to flip over immature grapes to their mature side. So in this instance, let's say that I flip over and choose this middle row. So I would then take every immature grape token and flip it over in that row. And then I get to put 2 of my hearts on those in that row or column that I chose. So I will take 2 hearts, and I could either put them on both of those wild grape tokens that I see there, or I could leave one on one of those wilds and put the other one on the red grapes. Either way, when you harvest, you're going to take a look at what grape tokens are in the field. You are then going to choose one grape type And again, grape types, we have white, purple, red, and green. Wild is not a grape type, but wilds will match the grape type that you have chosen. So you're going to look for a cluster of one grape type, which includes wilds, and you're then going to be able to move those from the field into any one of these 3 crush bins. You cannot split them up. You're going to choose just one crush bin to go in. And let's say, as I am looking at this field, these wilds are very helpful in terms of I can either choose, there are 4 red grape tokens, including those wilds, or you can also see that there are 4 green grape tokens. So let's say that I am going to choose green grapes on my turn. So what that will do is I will take all of those in the same cluster. There are 4 of them total. And let's say I am going to put them in this crush bin. Again, I'm choosing just one of these 3 crush bins to put them into. So I will then move all of these in that cluster into this crush bin. And that includes any hearts from other players. So the blue player here has this heart that will stay on it as it moves into the crush bin. And then I will look at how many grape tokens I have picked up. If it's just 1, I would then add just 1 heart to that crush bin. But in this case, I picked up 4 grape tokens. And what that means is there are 4 plus, you actually get to add 2 to that crush bin. So in that case, that would be 2 heart tokens. And they go right onto the crush bin here. We'll see how those flow through in a minute, but you can already see how that 1 heart that started off in Cultivate is already starting to travel through that winemaking process. At the Make Wine action, you can see that there are 2 small circles, so we can have up to 2 workers at this action space at any one time. When you make wine, you're going to be creating one of these barrels, and there are a number of different ones in the game. There's always going to be a stack that you'll see, and we're going to replace them and put more and more out there, so these recipes will always be different. What you are doing, though, is choosing one of these barrels to create by taking grapes from one crush bin and only one crush bin. So if you take a look at what we're looking at right now, this one requires 3 purple grapes. This one is looking for 2 green and 1 white grape. Hint, I think that's the one we're going to make. And then this one is looking for 2 red and 1 purple grape. So as I look at what's out here, again, it is my turn. So this player will play the Make Wine card, and maybe they play that under Sylvie. So in this case, let's say that I want to use these, let's put them where we can actually see them, these 2 green grape tokens, which don't have any hearts on them. And then, for the sake of this example, I want to use this wild, which is going to keep that, let me move away for a second, there is a blue heart on that, so that would come along with it, and those are the required grapes for this. So this heart will go here. We're going to remove these grape tokens. They go into a discard pile, a compost pile, if you will, off to the side. And then I used this crush bin, so I will take 1 heart from every player color that's present there. Right now it's just red. I would only take 1, not both. That moves into this barrel because they were part of that process when they harvested those grapes. And then me, since I made that wine, I get to put 1 heart of my color on that barrel. So you'll see everybody's kind of taking part in that. With the Age Wine action, you can see that we have a large circle here. So that again means that I can have any number of friends here at any one time. So on my turn, I might choose the Age Wine card, and I would play that on my player board, and let's say that we bring Greta in. So Greta will move in, we'll take her, and she will go into this space. And aging wine, you'll see that we have 3 distinct cellars. There's the left, the middle, and the right. And what we're doing here is we are aging wine and getting it closer and closer to being final here in the right cellar. So if there was any wine in the middle cellar, we'd first take those, move those to the right cellar, and then we'd take everything in the left and move it over one. So in this case, both of these wines would move to the middle cellar. Now I moved 2 wines total, it's 2, so I get to put out 1 heart. If I had been able to move 4 or more barrels total, I could put out 2 hearts. So I will take my 1 heart and I am going to place it on a barrel that I aged this turn, meaning that I moved it. So I could place it on this barrel, so I now have more hearts on there than other players, or I could place it on this one so that we are all evenly spread out, and we'll see how that plays out when we load the trucks, but there's a cool decision point there of where would you like to put your hearts. With the load action, you'll choose the barrels that are going to go onto the truck. And again, trucks are used for final scoring. These are where you are going to get a lot of those star tokens and a lot of points from. And they each have a unique scoring condition on them, which should give you a good idea of how you're sort of flowing your efforts through the whole winemaking process. For instance, if we take a look at this truck, this one says that you score an additional 2 stars if you have the same number of hearts on each loaded wine. That has to be 1 or more hearts. It is also saying that it requires 4 barrels in order for the truck to take off. So that's something to keep in mind as we play this out. So on my turn, I would choose the load card, and let's say I played that on my player board under Tomas, who's currently up here. We'd move him down here, and as another quick note, you'll see that load has 2 small circles. So this one is always available for all player counts, and there's a second one for 3 or 4 players. So Tomas could come down here, and what you get to do with the load action is you are going to choose either 1 or 2 barrels to load onto the truck. Now again, in this case, we're getting more stars with this scoring condition for having the same number of hearts on each loaded wine. So for me, as that choice, as I'm playing through there, we all have the same number, so it seems like a pretty good idea to load both of these onto the truck. And you will see why this is a cool and important decision-making action in a second. Right now, there were only 2 barrels in that rightmost cellar, fully aged, ready to be loaded, so I loaded both of those. That would be my turn. Now that may not look like you're doing a lot, but there are some very neat strategies here. So let's say that happened and we've kind of gone through a few more steps of winemaking, we've gone through a few more turns with everyone, and let's say at this point, we now have these 3 wines, or barrels, in that rightmost cellar. So now there are 3, and let's say it's come back around, and it's now someone else's turn, or someone else who has a load card available. Again, they would use their load action card, and since Tomas is already here, we can't use Tomas, but we are using 4 players, so this small circle is open to us. Let's say that we have played that to Greta, who will then move over here and occupy this space. And now, let's see, I didn't even choose which player color this was, but let's say that this is the red player. I'll kind of give you a couple of examples of how this is a cool action to take and why you'd want to take it at certain times. So again, this truck is looking for 4 barrels, so it will take off. Once it has 4 barrels, that ends your turn. As another example, if it had already had 3 barrels loaded on it, once I load 1, that's it. The truck will take off, we'll score it, and I can't load any other barrels. But this is where we are right now. So again, I'm looking at that scoring condition, and I said I was the red player, so it's fairly obvious. I want to put the barrels that have my hearts on that truck, so I'm going to score the most. Or score more points, I should say. That's the best decision for me. So I would load this barrel right here, and this one. And what that also does is, if you notice, I did not load this one where the blue player had 1 heart. Had these 2 been swapped, you can see that then the blue player, if they had gotten there first, they are going to get those 2 extra points because they have 1 heart on each barrel. But, haha, since the red player got there first, they got to make that decision. And now this is when truck scoring takes place. And this is a very cool moment in the game. So once that is all set, we are now going to score the truck. In this example, again, this is the level 1 truck. There's level 1, 2, and 3, because the end of the game is triggered once the 3rd truck takes off. In our example, though, this is the 1st truck. So with this one, for each player, you look at which barrel you have at least 1 heart on. You get a star token if you have participated in the process for at least, you added in everything there. So it's pretty clear. All players would get a star token for this barrel. Same thing here. For this barrel, the blue player is missing, so they don't get that star token. And similarly, there is no green heart here, so the green player wouldn't get it. However, even though there are 2 yellow hearts here, it's still just 1 star token for that player. We also then score for the special condition that we talked about on this truck card, which again was trying to have the same number of hearts on each loaded barrel. And again, in that case, because the red player got to do this first, they are going to get those 2 star tokens because they have 1 heart on every loaded barrel. The other players missed out. The yellow player is close, but they have 2 hearts loaded here. So that's not the same number of hearts on everything. So that's how that one player might get ahead in making that decision. Now, after that truck takes off, we would then return all of these heart tokens to their players. We would then discard our level 1 truck, and that then means that we move in and reveal the level 2 truck and take a look at how that is going to score, and you'll see that that requires 5 barrels. And then we'll get into it in a second, but that also moves up some other elements on the board and switches over to the next level. That includes the barrels. You'll see that we're going to move into level 2 barrels, and the train cards at the top of the board will also get replaced with the next level. But that is the load action, as well as some of the mechanics and how that scores and how you get to decide from that rightmost cellar and make the best decision for you. After a truck has been scored, there are a couple of steps that we do to go to the next level in the vineyard. So in this case, let's say that we just scored our level 1 truck. That would then be removed from the game, and we would move on to our level 2 truck and reveal that one. So this gives us a new scoring condition, and we see how many barrels are needed to load. There are a couple of additional steps though. So I'm going to move this out of the way as we see what that is. So we are also going to move up over here to take a look at the barrel display. So if you'll remember during setup, these are all level 1. We are now going to clear these out. So these are then removed from the game. And we go to our stack of level 2 barrels and refill with these. So you will see that there's a couple of additional scoring criteria. For instance, there are some barrels that will give you a star token just for completing them. And this creates new recipes that you can then create. To back up a second though, everything in the cellars remains where it is. Nothing is removed there. We are only replacing the barrel display with the next level. Additionally, we are then going to move up to the train cards, and these are then going to be cleared out and will move to the next level. So again, these are all level 1 truck cards. We're going to take all of those, remove them from the game, and we will now be using level 2 train cards. So we will then refill the display up here. So there are new options now from the next level. And these, as the game goes on, you'll see that level 2 and level 3 kind of give you different options. They're a little more powerful to kind of go along with those awesome action and worker combos that you're creating. That is what you would do in order to prepare for the next turn. So again, we now have new train cards, we now have new barrels in that display, and we are now working with a new level 2 truck card. Once this one has scored, we go through the same process again, exactly the same. We just move on to our level 3 truck card and then do the same thing where we are going to be using level 3 barrels and level 3 train cards. And as another reminder, once that level 3 truck card has scored, that is the end of the game immediately, and you see who has created the best wine as you have worked your way through the vineyard and added your efforts into that winemaking process. With the Great Action, you get to host a tour for different visitors who are going to be interested in checking out this beautiful vineyard and seeing all different things around the area. So this one has 2 small circles. I have Tomas in one right now. There's one that's always open for all player counts, and then one for 3+ players. So on my turn, I would then choose the Great Action card, and let's say I played that on my player board to Joe, who is right here. He would then come up and move to the Great space, and we then get to choose one of these 4 train cards that give different bonuses. This is how you often will gain additional coins or gain a special benefit. Paperwork is an interesting action where you're going to earn coins, and you are also able to then invest them in friend upgrades or improved action cards. So how would this work? In this case, I'm showing the player area to show that I have played these cards to the different friends and taken those actions in previous turns. At this point, I only have 2 cards left in my hand to play, and maybe it's just not a good time to load trucks, or I really want to do paperwork right now. The first thing you'll do is to count up how many cards you have played, including paperwork. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I would gain coins equal to that number of cards. So again, in that case, I'm going to gain 6 coins. In this example, I'm also saying that I had 4 coins from previous turns. So that's how many coins I currently have. You then pick up all of the played cards back into your hand, which then makes them available again. So for instance, if I'm trying to greet again, I now have that option where previously it was already played and I didn't have access to it. The other cool part of paperwork is how you are actually going to use these coins to invest in upgrades. All of this is optional, as extra coins are worth points at the end of the game, but finding those cool combinations of both friend upgrades and improved action cards is one of the really neat elements of gameplay. So how do I do that? So right now, I have 10 coins that I'm able to spend. Let's take a look at what it means to upgrade friends. So you'll notice that every friend on your player mat has a different specialty, and each one of these has a different upgrade track. Again, you'll always start with one character that has that first upgrade already purchased for you, and it's active from the start of the game. So in this case, Joe is pretty good at greeting. Now, when I make decisions about upgrading friends, I always have to start at the lowest level that is currently available. So here I would have to start with the 2 cost upgrade for any of these friends, or the 3 cost upgrade for Joe. And you can upgrade these in different ways. You may find that you want to focus on one friend only. Maybe Joe is the one that I want to focus on, or you might want to have a little bit more of a balanced approach if you see a cool move coming up on the board. So you may invest in someone else. In this example, let's say that we really think Joe is great at greeting. So in that case, I think the next upgrade for him which is saying if you earned at least 4 coins this turn, you may load 1 barrel. And that's awesome because that kind of chains events together. Not events, actions. So with that one, that costs 3 coins. So I would pay 3 coins back to the supply. And I then get one of these lovely little checkmark tokens. And we would then put that over that upgrade to indicate that it's been purchased. Now there are 2 upgrades that Joe has. And if I trigger both of those, I get both bonuses. So you can see how these get stronger and stronger as you make these decisions and upgrade in and invest in these friend upgrades. Alternatively, at this time, maybe I see out on the board that there's a really good opportunity to make wine. There's a good barrel I can make, but there's not enough grapes in a crush bin. Greta, with her make wine specialty, allows me to make a barrel with 1 less grape for up to 1 barrel. That I could say that is, I want to do that, in an upcoming turn. So for that one, that's her lowest upgrade. I would spend 2 coins back to the supply and put a check mark token on that upgrade to indicate that that has now been purchased. So now Greta has something that will apply when she makes wine. You can upgrade these however you want to, and there's cool combinations, and sometimes you may find that you don't need to upgrade any friend. That friend is not quite the one that's going to get you ahead, but then maybe with Joe here, that is how you are going to specialize. It's really, really cool. Now, that's friend upgrades. With paperwork again, I still have 5 coins left over. If I wanted to, I could spend it on some more friend upgrades. The other option, though, is that you will always have 4 cards towards the side of the board. For the sake of this argument, I'm just showing them like this, but usually you have them kind of laid out to the side so everyone sees these at all times. And these are improved action cards. They have different backs from your standard action cards, for instance, to tell them apart. But what improved action cards do is they actually upgrade an action card. So you'll see that they have a cost in the upper right, which is always going to be 5 coins. Aha! In this example, I have 5 coins to spend. And you will then get to kind of see what these do. They all do something different. So the worker bee card lets me cultivate, then harvest, all in one action. So that is a very powerful sort of ability. Same thing, administrator, greet, then paperwork. So that again, chaining together different actions. Other improved action cards, though, can give you different types of bonuses, not just 2 actions. The overseer, harvest, then before you refill the field, harvest again. It's kind of a double action, but it gives you something else to think about as you're harvesting. Or another fun card is the wild one, and this one allows you to activate any location, and then you can spend another 2 coins to then activate a second different location. So that can be very powerful. It does have a little bit more of a higher cost, but you can see how you can do some cool actions there. So if I want to purchase one of these, invest in one of these improved action cards, what I'm going to look for is I'm looking at this top icon. So for instance, if we pick up administrator, where are we here? The top icon is the greet action. So let's say that I want to pick this card up because again, it seems like I'm kind of focused on Joe and greeting, and this one actually makes greet even better for me because I paperwork after greeting and get this card back into my hand. So the way that you choose, let's say that I've chosen this improved action card. Let's just move these out for the sake of argument. I want to purchase this. That's going to cost me 5 coins. Those go back into the supply. And then I am going to replace a card in my hand. You will always have 7 action cards. You're never just adding, you are replacing. And why I said look at that icon is because you are going to replace the card with the matching icon. So in this case, administrator will replace greet. So that would take greet, and that is just out of the game. There'll be a discard pile somewhere else. But now I take this into my hand. Again, I still have 7 cards, but my greet action is now improved, and I can combine that with Joe's specialty here to make it even better for me and take even cooler turns. Let's take a look at a sample turn. So let's say that I have all of my action cards available in my hand, but I see an opportunity to make wine. So I want to make wine, and I'm going to use that with Greta. I've assigned my card, I've chosen my action card and placed it underneath Greta on my player mat. I have now moved her to that location, and now I will take that location action. And in this instance, again, the make wine space, you are making one barrel with the grapes from one crush bin. So in this case, I would take this purple grape, and then there is either a wild I could use, or I could use this white grape here, which I will use. That then transfers this heart token onto that barrel. These get removed from the game. And then I take one heart from each player that's in that crush bin. So it would be one yellow and one green. I'd place them on there. And if I am the blue player, that means that for making that wine, I get to add one of my hearts to that barrel. And then that barrel, again, let's get this so that we can actually follow along with that final step of that action. We have made this barrel. It will then move into the leftmost cellar right here. And at the end of the turn, we would then replace this barrel. So let's take a look at that turn, but with some of the upgrades in place to see how you create these really cool combos. So again, I'm going to look at all of the cards that I have in my hand, and in this instance, instead of having that basic make wine action card, I'm going to say that I have purchased this improved action card to have a Master Vintner card instead. So I'm going to choose to use that card. It's the same process as taking a turn. But notice that I'm going to play it to Greta again, but I have also purchased all of her upgrades in the Make Wine specialty. So we'll see how those all chain together in a second, but just to set it up, this is if we are really going into this really cool Make Wine step. So again, I will play the card underneath Greta on my player mat. We will then go track down Greta on the board. She is back up at Cultivate again. We will then take her and physically move her to an open space here at the Make Wine section. And so she's going to come here again. Same exact process there, but this has a whole lot of upgrades that I get to do, and we're hoping for a really cool turn that I have set up here. So my Master Vintner card, Make Wine, you may make up to one wine from each crush bin. So this gives me a chance to potentially make 3 wines on my same turn, on one turn, rather than just the standard one. Additionally, with all of these upgrades, Greta has the ability to use one less grape for up to 1 wine. When we make wine, you may discard 1 barrel and add 1 barrel to the display, then add 1 heart to any 1 barrel in the display. We'll show you how that works in a second, but then finally, if you made 2+ wines this turn, you may spend 2 coins to load one of those barrels. So that's like a whole lot of stuff. If we can pull it off, it's really, really neat. So I think the first thing that we would do here, because again, you can choose the order that you want to use everything here, I can see at a glance that I definitely cannot make this sparkling wine the way that I want to do it with how everything else is set up here. So I'm going to use Greta's ability here where I can discard a barrel from the display. So this has nothing on it. We will take that out. And then right now we're on the level 2 barrels. So we then replace that with the one from the top right there. We get a new one. And then for doing that, I then get to add 1 heart to one of these barrels. So let's say I add it to the new one that just came out there. And at a glance, I'm excited because I think I could make that one as well. So again, for my Master Vintner card, I can make up to 1 wine from each crush bin. I'm looking forward to trying to do that. And I can keep in mind that I can use 1 less grape for up to 1 wine. So let's see how I'm going to do that. First of all, this one that just came out, as luck would have it, I can see that I can create it from this crush bin right here. And again, just want to stress, you do not have to go in straight lines. So this crush bin can be used for any barrel, but I'm going to kind of use that here just to kind of show you a pretty cool example of what's going on. So for this one, I want to make this one. So we're going to take these red grapes That will move this heart token here from the yellow player. And then I can also use purple grapes, and that is that full recipe for that one right there. So these grape tokens get removed to the compost pile. Because I made a wine, or because I am the one who has made it, I can add my heart token there. I take one of the hearts from each player and put it in the crush bin. And then an important note, for a barrel that has one of these star tokens or even two on it, I immediately gain a star token or a victory point just for making that. So that's going to come over here, and that's mine. And then that is going to move down into that first cellar. We'll just kind of move down just to show you where we're going with that, but that'll go into that leftmost cellar. But my turn is not over because, again, I've chained together all of these cool abilities and upgrades. So I also want to make this barrel from this crush bin because I can see I can use this one and this one. So I have both of those purple grapes, and then I could take a wild, or I could take the white grapes. I'll take the white ones. This stays with that barrel because I used it. These grape tokens get removed. We take one heart token from each player in the crush bin. And then because I created that, I add my heart, and that is now down in the cellar. And a reminder that this is all cleanup, so we don't replace these in the middle of this action. So far, I've made a barrel from this crush bin and this crush bin, and now I want to try to make this barrel from this one. And now at a glance, you can see that does not have the right recipe. However, with this upgrade, I can use one less grape for up to one wine. So what I can do here is take the green grapes, which will meet those criteria, and then I can use this one wild to meet one of these red ones, and I get to ignore one of those. So guess what? I created that barrel. It is done. So we take one heart from each player color here. And again, because I made that wine, I get to add my heart token to it. These grape tokens are out into the compost pile. At this point, let's kind of shift down here because we are still going with our turn. And we now move this one into the cellars. And that was 3 barrels that I just made on my turn, these 3. And because I did that, I made 3 barrels. If I make 2 or more wines this turn, you may spend 2 coins to load one of those barrels. So, for instance, if I still had 2 coins left in my player area, I could spend those 2 and then immediately load one of those wines that I just made onto the truck, which could actually trigger scoring. It could set me up for potentially gaining the most points just from that move with make wine. I'm suddenly in another action, but within the make wine step because of what I just did with all of those cool upgrades and actions. That is one of the coolest ways that you can do some of these turns. There are other ways to take advantage of different locations, but that was a huge, exciting turn. When that can happen, it is so awesome. And setting yourself up and being able to do that is just the most fun. It is awesome, and I love it when that happens. So through the whole game of Vineyard, you're going to be looking for opportunities to add your efforts into the winemaking process. You're going to be taking your hearts and finding clever ways to add those into those different steps, whether it's in the field and adding those directly to the grape tokens, getting them into the crush bins, making the wine itself, aging it, loading those onto the trucks, or maybe even finding a cool way to greet a train card to get an advantage as you go through moving these friends around, taking these different actions, finding ways to kind of set yourself up for those really exciting turns, possibly with something like an improved action card or pairing that with friend upgrades that you invest in, and finding those cool ways to have those exciting turns and see how your efforts sort of flow through that winemaking process so that by the time the third truck takes off and it's the end of the game, you are hopefully going to be the player with the most star tokens and win. And that's how you play Vineyard, a winemaking game. Hopefully this gave you a great idea of all of those cool decisions that you get to make, how timing your actions and using those different workers is going to work so that you can take those really exciting turns just like me. Thanks so much for watching and take care. Bye.